Yo, what's going on everybody? This is Shok. I apologize for getting this video up mad late. I tried to get it up 2 days ago, but I kid you not, the video was 40 minutes long and there's just no way I was going to upload a 40-minute review of this game. Wasn't going to happen, but there's a lot to talk about in this game, so it's hard to do a video review of this within a timely manner, at least for me. I don't know how those other reviewers have done it. But yeah, and outside of that, I've been busy studying, and when I've had leisure time, I've been too busy playing this game, so it's been hard to pry myself away from playing it to actually do the video review. But I'm going to try to do this video as quickly as possible because I'm really cutting into studying time right now, but I just had to get this up for you guys because I promised I would. So here it is, my Xenoblade Chronicles X review. Now, some general information before we get into the actual meat of the game. For those of you who may not be too savvy or knowledgeable with it, this is a spiritual successor to the original Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii, so what that means is no, you do not need to play the first game to understand what's going on in this game. Now with that being said, there's one of the tyrants right there, pretty much mini bosses who roam in the fields or whatever. With that being said though, playing the first game will allow you to appreciate this game more, and it will allow you to catch a lot of the references that are in this game that it makes, towards the first. The general story, pretty much two warring alien factions, rage war over Earth, and the humans pretty much build arcs to escape it. They were warned about it beforehand, but one of the arcs were followed, which was the White Whale, and it crash landed on planet Mira, and at the bottom of the ship was the city, New Los Angeles, which is this thing you guys see in front of you guys right here. So pretty much the humans are here and, they're pretty much struggling and fighting for survival. Of course, the hostile aliens called the Ganglion follow them or whatever, and they're trying to kill them. And there's a good reason why they're trying to kill them, but I'll explain that later in the video when I talk about the actual story. And sorry I don't have my webcam. I left it at my friend's house, so this is why you guys are getting like a commentary interview. But yeah, this is the city of New Los Angeles. It's pretty huge, as you guys can see. This is the only city in the game, but it's cool because the city is ever evolving. You could change it, you could bring different alien species to ally with the humans into it, and of course that opens up quest lines and stuff like that, but I will talk about that later. But let's talk about the world of Mira and kind of just the overall exploration and graphics and whatnot of this game. This game's world is incredible. It's incredibly engrossing. It's very believable. And the reason why I say it's very believable is because a lot of these enemies, right, they have like very, very believable, behaviors and whatnot. For instance, some enemies will be sleeping at night as to where they'll be running around the day. Some have different behaviors depending on the weather conditions, and stuff like that. The enemies are much more dynamic in this game compared to the first Xenoblade Chronicles. They're not just standing around or just, running on the same, walk cycle or whatever. There's some enemies who are, running around the entire map almost. You see them migrating together. It's just really cool stuff to observe. But yeah, this right here is the continent of Olivia, as you can see, just really beautiful. Just the art style, the music that goes along with these continents. The world is just very engrossing and there's so much to explore. This game is absolutely huge, but most importantly, this game has no load times outside of when you're fast traveling or going back to the barracks. No loading times whatsoever in the open world. It's all, loaded seamlessly, and there's no invisible walls. The only actual invisible wall is when you go high up into the sky and you're trying to go up infinitely, but like that's it. And you could go pretty high up in the first place. But pretty much no invisible walls, no loading time outside of fast traveling. Really cool, huge, just engrossing worlds. But let's move on to the combat. The combat, of course, is built off of Xenoblade Chronicles, but for those of you who didn't like the combat at the first game, because I know a lot of people didn't, don't take that to heart too much, because this combat system is much more satisfying. It's way cooler, but most importantly, it's much faster. The best way I can explain it is, it's kind of like the differences between the Dark Souls games and, Bloodborne. A lot of people complain that the Dark Souls games were too slow or whatever, and Bloodborne was faster and they like that. So that's the best comparison I can make, regarding this game. It's much faster, it's much more fluid. A lot of people ask, what does this game play like? I like to say it plays like an MMO, but I gotta be careful when I say that, because I know a lot of people don't like the way MMOs play. They think it's boring and monotonous, which I could definitely understand. But this game isn't so much like that. It's not so repetitive and just about finding the best rotation. and that's mostly in part due to the soul voices. If you guys, sorry, I know I'm talking fast, I'm trying to make this video as short as possible. If you guys saw the circle that popped up on my screen during that battle, that's the soul voice. It's pretty much a quick time event that you have to hit at the right time, and it'll heal you, and then it'll activate certain bonus effects or whatever. Let's see if I can do it again just in case it didn't pop up the first time. Oh nope, I didn't one shot him. Never mind. So pretty much soul voices happen whenever you do a bonus effect of an art, and your AI partner will like hit an art, right, and do the bonus effect, and it'll say move in for a melee attack. Then if you go in for a melee attack, you know, you'll heal the party and you activate the bonus effects and whatnot. So pretty much what that does is it kind of breaks up the whole rotation thing of just doing the optimized rotation, because sometimes you're going to want to listen and do, you're going to want to, you know, break the rotation and do what your teammates are recommending you to do. You have arts, which are the ones that are used in combat, as you can see here. Your weapons that you use are tied to your arts. So dual sword arts will be separate from long sword arts, for instance. And of course you have skills, which are pretty much, you know, passive skills. Not passive skills, of course they're skills, but passive arts, I guess you could say. Passive abilities, you know, that help you out during your combat, that complement your arts or whatnot. And of course this game also does have a class system, as you can see here. It has all the typical, you know, RPG tropes. For instance, you know, the warrior class, you know, the tank class, the thief class, the archer class, and the mage class. And this is pretty much just kind of a whatever you want to do kind of class, pretty much. So just quick rundown the classes there. So there's something for everybody. If you guys want to do a range, you know, focused character, you could do that. If you want to do DPS, you could do that. If you want to be a tank, you could do that. If you want to be a healer, you could do that as well. So it has all that for you RPG fans. One thing I will say about, well, it's not necessarily about the combat system, but the targeting system is kind of crap. Wish I could find a group of enemies here. But basically, sometimes when you're trying to target an enemy, it'll target an enemy that's freaking off screen, and it makes no sense. Or if you're looking at a giant enemy like a tyrant, for instance, and then smack dab in the middle of your screen, it'll target a smaller enemy that is right next to it as well. As a matter of fact, if you guys go back and watch my that ether build dual swords video I just uploaded, you'll see an example of that. Like I'm trying to target a monster's leg, and it's targeting two smaller monsters like right around it, right? It makes no sense. The AI, I have to say, is not as good as the AI in the first game. The AI in the first Xenoblade was really useful. Really, for the most part, you feel like you're fighting alone in this game, and it sucks to say that, but I'm just being honest. You know, no bias here. I'm not gonna act like this game is greater than it actually is. The AI is kind of crap. The only AI partners that are actually useful, that you feel like you're fighting with, like you have help, are the tank characters, the people who use the shields. But that's pretty much it. You do feel like you have partners with you when they are in their skells though, but as far as on foot, the AI kind of sucks. Now let's go on to the mechanics of the game. Not necessarily the gameplay mechanics, but the things that you can do and the things that kind of make... Oh, this is Noctilum, by the way, kind of like a little forest continent. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention when I was talking about the world, everything you see, you can go to. If you can see it, you can fly there, other than the moon. Of course you can't fly to the moon, but anything you see, you can fly to it. No invisible walls whatsoever. Nothing is off limits, so that's really cool. But let me go back to NLA so I can commentate over what I'm about to talk about next. There's this thing called Frontier Nav, right? And this is part of what makes the game so immersive and engrossing. Like, you really feel like you're a member of Blade. And Blade is pretty much the organization here, the military power, I guess you could say, of New Los Angeles, of the last known, you know, piece of humanity. They're pretty much the military and political power. They run everything, you know, they're fighting for humanity's survival, whatever. There's this thing called Frontier Nav, I wish I could show you guys, but it's on the gamepad, right? And you pretty much place probes to map out the region, and the probes give you information of when a new enemy is in the area, you know, a new tyrant, whenever new, treasure are on the maps, you know, stuff like that. And it's really, really cool. This right here is the arms manufacturer's kiosk. And basically you can invest Miranium, which is the stuff that you mine for, and invest it into these companies. And as you see, I have them all maxed out. And they all, not specified, they all specialize, you know, certain attribute armors and weapons and stuff like that. And once you level them up, you unlock, you know, new and stronger weapons and armors from these companies. So that's a really cool system there. So basically, what I'm saying is, the story in this game is very well integrated into the game itself. You know, it's not just the story, and the story is just itself. You know, the story is just alone, is its own separate thing. The story is well integrated into the interactions that the player will have with the game. You see what I mean? So all that stuff really makes you feel like you are part of Blade. It really makes you feel like you are inside this game, because there's a lot of stuff that you can do, and it's very believable stuff. You know, like I was saying earlier, like you know, if you go on this planet and you know you have this military organization, like yeah, you know, this is stuff that humans would actually do if they were in this situation, right? So very, very immersive experience. The characters. Sorry if you guys don't like this music. I know a lot of people don't like the NLA music, but I'll talk about that later in the video. The side characters right here, we have Elma and Fog. Those are the ones I have right now because I was trying to get specific weapons. Because the characters you have in your party, depending on the class, also increase the chances of you getting a weapon of that class. Fun fact. But the characters have affinity missions. This is one right here, for instance. Affinity missions pretty much give you a better look into the character, you know, who they are, what's their motivations behind what they do, their history or whatever. So they're pretty much special missions for that specific character to let you, you know, learn more about the character. And at the end of the missions, you also get one of their special abilities, because although the characters have the same classes that you can use, and of course they have the same arts and skills, each character has 2 unique skills that you can only get from them by doing their affinity missions. But I'll talk more about the actual characters, the main characters, you know, when I actually start talking about the story. The NPCs and quest lines in this game are actually extremely good. The best I've ever seen in an RPG, like legit. You know, of course you have your stupid, you know, silly, typical RPG quests like, oh, you gotta help this guy get a girlfriend or whatever. But there's a lot of quests that make you go like, oh crap, you know, like this is some serious stuff. There's a lot of deep stuff. You know, there's a lot of funny stuff. A lot of these quests handle, you know, real world issues, you know, such as, you know, racism, or I guess you could say xenophobia. You know, there's stuff like that. There's political stuff. There's assassination. There's regret and, you know, betrayal. You know, and there's some of that in the main story, but, you know, there's a lot of that in the side stories. And when you invite new alien species into NLA with you, that unlocks, you know, new quest lines for that specific, you know, species of people, and then the quest lines will actually, you know, intermingle with other ones, and it's really, really cool. It's really cool, just how deep. Like for instance, you know, in most games, you know, you run past these NPCs and you're like, oh, they're irrelevant, but I could walk past this Vervita, you know, person, right? And I could do a quest of somebody else who's in a completely, someone who's a different species of alien, right? And like she'll end up popping up in there because I did a quest from her, you know, prior to it, right? So it's all really intermingled and intertwined. It really feels like the citizens of New Los Angeles, right, are really connected, and it's a really cohesive, you know, side quest experience. Really, really, really cool, really well put together, really well built. The only problem I have with the quest are the gathering quests, which is one of the main flaws of this game. So when you take a gathering quest, let me go to my mission board and see if I have one, so I can see an example. See right here, if you look at the left, it says obtain no, not that one. Hold on, right there. Gather 8 Galgium crystals and Noctilum, right? That's all it tells you. That's all it tells you. So a gathering quest will just say, hey, you got to get this item in this continent, but it won't actually tell you where in the continent to get it, as to where in the first game, right? It would say, hey, do this at the waterfall and this continent, you know, something like that. So this game does not tell you where to gather, you know, this stuff. And yes, I'm all against, you know, games doing too much hand holding and stuff like that. But when you have a game of this size, you need to kind of specify where things are a little bit better than that though. But right now I'm flying up just to show you guys like the size of one of the continents, and actually Noctilum is one of the actually smaller ones actually. But yeah, the game is just huge, so sometimes, when you don't have an explanation like that, it just kind of makes you frustrated, because you could be looking around for, you know, hours trying to find something. Turns out though, you can talk to the NPC who gave you the mission, and sometimes they will specify an area. But the problem with that is, which is one of the main problems playing this game, the game doesn't tell you anything, right? There's so much in this game, and there's so much you can do. It's so huge and whatnot. There's so much going on, but there's no tutorials, no explanations whatsoever, right? And so I definitely have to dock off points for that, because when you have a game this complex, things need to go explained. But let's finally officially get into the story. And this is pretty much the most controversial part of this game, because I see a lot of people say it's really good and interesting, and a lot of people say it's bad. And so a lot of people haven't played the game, don't know who to believe, they're confused. Let me tell you guys this. Both people are right. And here's why, right? The story has very, very cool, interesting concepts, right? Very, like, oh crap, I want to like learn more about that. And it has, you know, cool plot twists, you know, here and there and whatnot. The problem is that it's all executed, you know, fairly poorly for the most part. And then a lot of it isn't even expanded upon or, you know, used any further into the game. So, for instance, right, you know, there's this concept in the game where, you know, Elma mentions it first. She's like, there's something weird about this planet. You know, there's something up with this planet, right? And the alien species that you run into, they're like, yeah, we got dragged here. We don't know how, but, you know, something happened, right? So that kind of happens in the first, what, 20, 30 hours of the game. And then that doesn't get mentioned until the very end, after you kill the last boss, literally at the last cutscene after the credits is the next time that idea gets discussed or talked about. You see what I'm saying? So in the game, you know, there's this whole concept and idea of, whoa, there's something weird and going on about this planet, but then it doesn't get explored, it doesn't get expanded upon, right? And there's other things in the story that are like that as well. So the ideas and concepts are cool. The problem is that they are not used, they are not expanded upon, and they are not explained any further. This is one of my favorite tracks in the game, by the way. Freaking Civil Night Time. It's so good. So yeah, that's the thing. And also the characters, right? You got that L guy. He just kind of comes out of nowhere. It's like, hey, I'm a native here. I'm an alien. Yeah, I saw your guys' thingamajig. Let me join you. Go back to the city. And then that's kind of it, right? There's nothing more to L. There's nothing more about him, right? Like the game doesn't explain anything outside of the affinity missions. There's really nothing else to be said about the character, you know. So there's all these characters that are in the main story that don't really get much character development within the story. If you want the character development, you gotta go to the affinity missions. So again, cool concepts. The story was enjoyable, don't get me wrong. There's just a lot left to be desired. The best way I can explain the story is that it's like a pepperoni pizza. It's not necessarily anything like brand spanking new. You know, you've seen a pepperoni pizza before, you've eaten a pepperoni pizza before, but it's a tasty pepperoni pizza. You see what I mean? So it's very common, you know, in ways. There's a couple unique aspects about the story, but it's very common in ways. But it's good, right? You're not gonna say, oh, that story was crap, but you will say that the story was handled like crap. But the story itself was not crap. So that's the best way I can explain the story. The soundtrack. The soundtrack is another controversial thing about this game. Basically, here's the thing about the soundtrack, right? The tracks people don't like are tracks that are played more often. So it's not necessarily that this game has a lot of bad tracks, it's just that the tracks people don't like are played a lot of the time. For instance, when you go into the air with your Skell, the flight theme plays, and most people hate the flight theme, right? This right here. And then in, you know, New LA, the night and day themes, people don't like that as well. And of course, you're gonna spend a lot of time in LA. So that's what people mean when they say they don't like the soundtrack or whatever. But as you guys have been hearing throughout this review, the music on the continents are actually very, very good. The battle themes are very, very cool and addictive. You know, a lot of people don't like the lyrics, but honestly, a lot of the battles, a lot of the normal battles aren't gonna last long enough to where the lyrics kick in. And when the lyrics don't kick in, you know, it kind of actually makes it feel like it's a special battle, because if the lyrics kick in when you're still fighting, that kind of means the battle is special because it's been going on for a while, you know. So I didn't mind the lyrics at all, you know, for the battle theme. I hardly heard them, but when I did hear them, it was actually really cool because of the effect, you know, I just explained, you know, the effect that it has on the battle and whatnot. Honestly, you know, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but I feel like this game has more better tracks than the original. I won't say that any individual track is better than, like, you know, the best track on the original Xenoblade, but this game does have more catchy tracks that I would put on my phone than the original does. I will say that. So I love the soundtrack personally. Oh, and I forgot to mention the, you know, audio in general. While we're on soundtrack, voice acting solid. You know, pretty solid. I won't say it's like, you know, great or phenomenal, but the voice acting is pretty solid. The only problems with the voices I have are Lynn's. Lynn's voice is kind of cringy sometimes, but outside of that, the voice acting is pretty good. And the voice options for the avatars, male and female avatars, are very good as well. I forgot to talk about the avatars, by the way. I'm sorry I'm talking so quickly and kind of like in a rambling manner, guys. I'm trying to get through this review as quickly as possible. But yeah, the voice actors for the avatars the voice options are very good. And of course you can customize male or female, your avatar, size, you know, and all that, hairstyle, eyes, you know, facial features, all that good stuff. Lastly, the scales. I don't want to talk too much about the scales, because I would be talking for too long. This video will be extra long. But the combat pretty much feels like the ground combat, except, you know, more powerful. So it's pretty much what you would expect. They control well. They do not, people think they will break the balance of the game, those who haven't played it, but they do make you stronger, don't get me wrong. But there's still lots of crap in this game that could one-shot your scales. So don't think that scales ruin the balance. And it's actually really impressive how well Monolith has balanced the scales in this game. So this right here is the Ares 90, these scales that you guys see me and my crew cruising in. You don't unlock these scales until you beat the game. So these are post-game scales, and as you can see, you can most enemies in just one shot, just like that. But there's still a bunch of enemies out there who can actually one-shot you just like that. So, you know, don't think it's, oh, GG's game over once you get one of these Ares scales. But yeah, the scales are balanced really well, and just like the ground combat, you know, your ground gear and whatnot, there's gear for your scales, and there's also, you know, weapon gems and augments. You know, you can put on your scales as well. As you see, like, there's slots on the weapons and whatnot. So yeah, lots of customization. Of course, you can change the color of your scales and whatnot, like this. So yeah, last but not least, post-game content in the multiplayer, guys. There is so much content in this game. Look at my hours in it. Not even close to being done. I'm not even close with the survey rates, which is pretty much you know, the exploration rates of the continents or whatever. Not even done with all the missions or the side stories. I haven't even done all the affinity missions. So much to do. And once the game, once you beat the game, there's, you know, new enemies that, you know, you could fight. Of course, there's new things you could craft and create. I didn't show you guys the crafting and creating, but yeah, for instance, these scales you see are one of the examples of something that unlocks post game. There's blueprints, you know, enemies will drop, or blueprints you get from certain quest lines that will give you the ability to it pretty much unlocks, you know, a weapon or an armor or whatever, and then you can see the materials you need to go gather and create that weapon or armor or whatnot. Yeah, let's go right here. This right here is where you do all your crafting, engineer augments. This is like the weapon gems for those of you guys who played other RPGs, you know. You have tons and tons of stuff here, and it's really just, it just makes your head dizzy how much stuff you can actually like craft and freaking make. Let's go here, scale weapons right here. Scale augment weapons, excuse me. I meant to go to scale weapons. Scale weapon augments. Develop new gear, there we go. So you can develop all these weapons. These will be question marks until I unlock the blueprints to actually make those things. So yeah, there's so much you can make and just do in the post game. It's, the amount of content is just absolutely staggering. If you guys look at the mini map, the little book looking things you see, you know, those are all affinity missions, whatever. So much to do, and there's just so much intel. The intel you see where it says female blade in the top right, the intel you get from passing up an NPC are actually very useful. So like I said, one of the things I like most about this game is how it makes the most common NPCs, you know, very useful, and, you know, makes them feel alive and actually part of the city, you know, and part of the story. So all that's just really cool, really great. The multiplayer, I'll say this about the multiplayer, there's tons of multiplayer missions to do, and it's fun playing co-op with friends. But one thing I don't like about the multiplayer missions is how easy they are. Outside of global nemesis missions, the multiplayer missions are extremely easy, and you really don't need to use teamwork. You'll pretty much complete all these missions no problem, as long as none of you guys are idiots, and that's pretty much it. You don't really need to use teamwork for the missions at all. They're pretty stupid easy outside of the global nemesis missions. But you access the multiplayer through here. This is the network console. And there's also other forms of multiplayer. There's kind of a passive form of multiplayer, which is the squads, which pretty much you team up with 31 other people and you take out a certain list of monsters or a certain list of materials or whatever, and you get reward tickets for that. And you can also recruit other people's characters as well, and people can recruit your characters. So if you like a character build that one of your friends has, you can actually download your friend's character and use them. So that's pretty much the multiplayer in a nutshell. It's really cool. This game does have text chat. It does also support keyboard chat, so you can talk to people. Really cool. This game is just a huge cohesive experience. Combat is very fun. Just the problems is that there's no explanations for most of the stuff in this game. So a lot of hours you spend in this game being frustrated because you don't know what to do or where to go. Oh, I'm sorry. I did not know that I didn't have Discord muted like that. Okay, but yeah, the story isn't handled very well. There's not really enough explanations. The multiplayer missions are very simple and don't really require any strategy. And some of the tracks you get, the flight track in particular, just personally, I get tired of hearing, because sometimes you know I want to hear the theme of whatever continent or area I'm in, but I also want to fly around so I get somewhere quicker. But once I start flying, you know, the theme kicks in and I can't hear the song anymore. So a lot of the songs and the way they're used are pretty annoying. So those are the flaws I would say that are in this game. And also some of the animations are a little, you know, kind of like twitchy. Like if you look at that, like the way it kind of unfolds, it just kind of like snaps into the, you know, the skating animation. Shouts to Transformers. Some of the animations are buggy. Oh, there's a lot of pop-in in this game as well, if you guys haven't noticed. A lot of texture pop-in, and there's a lot of object pop-in, especially when you're going fast. Sometimes you go faster than the game will actually load things. So sometimes you get in certain areas and you'll get there, and you can like sit there for like a minute. Well, not a minute, that's an exaggeration, and like wait for things to load in. It's pretty crazy. As you can see right here, you see all that pop in. So there's a lot of pop in, and I do have the data packs installed. So this is with the data packs, and the pop in is still that bad. So yeah, those are definitely the flaws of this game. This game definitely has flaws. The flaws are real. The story leaves a lot more to be desired. A lot of the enemies show up, and then you kill them, and then that's kind of it. It's like, whoa, there's not more to this enemy. Why did this enemy even exist? They're not really explored that much. The final boss of this game doesn't even interact with your character or, you know, your supporting characters or whatever until like the last boss fight, right? They don't even meet him until the very end of the game, right? So there's really none of this, you know, bitter, you know, rivalry or enemies like, oh, it's you, you know, this will be our final battle. You know, there's nothing like that. So the story definitely could have been executed, you know, much better. Like I said, there's a lot of cool concepts and whatnot, but just the execution of it all, very just underwhelming. I'm surprised that Monolith handled the story this way, because they're usually very good at stories. But those are the flaws. Outside of that, though, the world is very engrossing. The content it's staggering. There's so much to do, you won't even know where to begin. So much content. The combat system is very fluid. It's very smooth. And it's very in-depth. If you guys go back and look at the Ether build video I just uploaded, there's so many combinations and just stuff that you can do. It's staggering. So is this game better than the first one? Honestly, it's hard to say. I kind of judge games based on their own merits. So I will say that Xenoblade Chronicles, the original, is the better game based off the fact that it has less flaws. But if you were to ask me which game I'd rather have, I'd much rather have this game, because this game is more fun to play. So there's more going on in this game, but Xenoblade, the original Xenoblade, I would say is more of the polished title. But this game is definitely great. I definitely agree with the Metacritic score, you know, 84, 85-ish. I could definitely see it, you know, being somewhere around that. Very solid game. Buy it. And if you don't like RPGs, buy this game, because I actually know a lot of people who don't like RPGs, especially JRPGs, and they enjoy the heck out of this game. So if you don't like MMOs, if you don't like RPGs, still try this game out, because it's very despite how staggering it is, you know, with the content, all the stuff you can do, it's also very appealing to the masses and very accessible at the same time. So definitely try it out, guys. This game is a buy. Best game on the Wii U in 2015 by far, and definitely top 3 best games on the system. Buy it. But that's for this review, y'all. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all later.